I have to admit something, I am a lazy baker. It's not my forte. I love to eat sweets. I love Greek sweets and pastries, but it's not something I feel that comfortable or confident making, even after all these years in the kitchen. But there are a few Greek desserts that are made for people like me. And one of them is called Galaktoboureko. It's one of the classic Greek Phyllo desserts, and it's filled with a beautiful custard made with milk, eggs, sugar, some seasonings, and this beautiful fine semolina flour. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is get the syrup going, because that has to be actually cool when we pour it over the finished pie. 2 cups of sugar here and a cup of water. We want to cook the sugar and the water over medium heat until the sugar dissolves. Keep stirring while you do this. And we want to add a piece of lemon zest, a strip of lemon zest to this. Sometimes I also add a little orange. So once the sugar starts to dissolve, we add our 2 strips of citrus zest, 1 cinnamon stick, and a couple of pieces of whole clove. So I'm going to let the syrup simmer for about 10 minutes. And in the meantime, I'm going to get going on the next step of the recipe, which is to whisk together 1/2 cup of sugar and 4 eggs. I'm going to whisk the eggs now. I'm going to set that aside. The next step is to make the semolina filling. So the first thing we want to do is warm the milk and the sugar together. And you want to stir that for the sugar to dissolve. I'm also going to add a little vanilla extract to this and a tiny, just literally a pinch of salt. I'm going to add a little lemon zest to the milk. And I like to add a tiny bit of orange zest to this as well. And you always want to add a little bit of lemon juice to the syrup to cut the sweetness a little bit, but also to keep it from crystallizing. The syrup's ready. I'm going to turn it off. The milk mixture is starting to simmer. And it's right at this point that we want to add the semolina, and you want to do that slowly and make sure you're whisking vigorously while you do it. You can see it's starting to thicken up. This is what we're looking for. You see how it's thickened up? But we want to keep cooking it until it starts to pull away from the center. And you can see that's starting to happen when you draw the whisk through the bottom. So this is almost there. And the next thing that goes in here, and you want to do this while you're whisking very vigorously, is you want to add the egg and sugar mixture. Just do this really fast because you want to keep the egg from turning into an omelet. And that is beautiful. Perfect consistency. I like to add a touch of butter to the actual semolina filling. Just gives it a nice flavor. So this is actually a little thicker than I want it. Baking's hard. You know, I'll be honest with you. So I'm going to just loosen this up a tiny bit by adding a little bit of milk to the mixture. This looks really good now. Not too sweet, nice and lemony. So the next thing we have to do is melt the butter, which we're going to use to lubricate the phyllo. So now we're going to assemble the Galaktoboureko. You have to work fast with the phyllo and try to keep it covered to keep it from drying out, especially if your oven is on in the kitchen and it gets a little hot. So what we want to do is place the first sheet on the bottom. We're going to probably do 6 to 8 sheets on the bottom. And then brush that with the melted butter. Try to get the edges. And then we place the next sheet on top. And the overlap is not a bad thing at all because that will make our edges all the prettier. Oops, one more this way. Brush that a little bit as well. 4. I'm going to do something a little bit different with this one. You can almost use this as a double sheet. You want to have more sheets on the bottom than on the top because the semolina filling is quite dense and heavy. So you want to make sure that the bottom phyllo is also thick enough to hold it without tearing or without getting too soggy. And do one more sheet on the bottom. And then fold this one in as well. So now we want to get the filling into the pan. And you can see it's super thick. It's good to let the filling cool down a little bit before you do this. It's easier to work with when it's cooler. You can even refrigerate it, and you can make this in individual pieces and freeze them and then bake them off right before you serve them. So then we just want to make sure that we smooth and even out the surface. Beautiful. I have a little trick here, which is just to drizzle a little butter over the filling too. And now we're ready to add our top sheets. I want to cut these in half so that they fit a little bit better directly on the surface. And then same thing, the sheet goes on top one at a time. Each phyllo sheet, pat it gently down with your hands, brush it with butter, get the next sheet up on top. Oops. There we go. Press it down gently. And this is our last sheet, number 6. And then what we want to do is we can trim this if we want, or we can just turn in the edges. It's starting to dry out a little around the edges, but that's not going to show at all once this goes into the oven and is baked. Just try to make it even. And we want to brush that with a little butter too, of course. So now we want to score this. Gorgeous. This is going into the oven. I've got the oven preheating at 350 Fahrenheit. And now the Galaktoboureko will bake for around 45, 50 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, until the phyllo is nice and crispy and golden. And as soon as it comes out of the oven, we're going to take the hot pan of Galaktoboureko and pour the cooled syrup right over it. The kitchen smells amazing, and so will yours if you make the Galaktoboureko. I'm going to get it out of the oven now, and then we're going to do what we call in Greek Thato Syropiaso. I'm going to pour the cooled syrup over the hot pastry. So this is the moment of truth. So the syrup is nice and cooled, and slowly pour it over the hot Galaktoboureko. Now all of this syrup is going to be absorbed. It's going to actually dampen the filling. And maybe there's a little bit more in here. Might want to just Now it is the moment of Galaktoboureko truth. Wow! How am I going to tackle this piece?